Welcome to Unspoken Affairs. In today's story, I want to take you deep into a chapter of my life that tested my marriage, my identity as a woman, and the way I understood love itself. It is not a simple story, nor is it one I share lightly. My name is Rachel Montgomery. I am 38 years old, and this is the truth about how the unthinkable became my reality. How the man I married opened a door I never thought I would step through, and how on the other side of it I found myself again. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, the kind of place where the streets are lined with maple trees. The lawns are neatly trimmed, and the neighbors wave when they see you pulling into your driveway. From the outside, our lives look picture perfect. People see the Montgomery family and think stability, tradition, normalcy. A husband who works as an accountant, a wife who once dreamed of writing but instead chose motherhood. 2 children, Ethan, our son, and Olivia, our daughter, plus a golden retriever, who insists on being walked twice a day. But what people don't see, what they never see, is the quiet erosion that can happen inside a marriage. Not the explosive arguments or dramatic betrayals you might expect, but something more subtle. Something that creeps in slowly until one day you wake up realizing you're not sure when you stopped feeling alive. Eric and I have been married for 15 years. We met back in college when I was an English literature student, my head filled with poetry and novels, while he was buried in spreadsheets and accounting textbooks. We weren't what you'd call a fiery couple. There wasn't some wild cinematic romance that drew us together. What we had instead was trust and ease with each other and a shared vision of building a life. He was dependable. I was steady. Together, we were practical. That practicality became the backbone of our marriage. We bought a modest house, had our 2 children, and built routines that made life predictable. Weekday breakfasts, school drop-offs, family movie nights, and yearly trips to the beach. We functioned like clockwork, and in many ways it was enough, or at least I thought it was supposed to be. But about 2 years ago, something began to shift. It wasn't one dramatic incident, no sudden betrayal or blowout fight. It was silence. The silence that sneaks into a marriage and sits between 2 people who used to share everything. Our conversations became transactional. Who's picking up groceries? When's Ethan's soccer practice? How much did the water bill come to this month? The laughter that once filled our kitchen faded into a dull hum of obligations. And somewhere in that quiet, I began to feel invisible. Not unloved, not unwanted, just unseen. I was a wife, a mother, a manager of schedules, a keeper of lists. But the woman I had once been, the girl who dreamed, who craved passion, who longed to be understood, she had been buried under years of routine. I never imagined Eric would notice, let alone bring it up. He is a man of habits, of careful calculations. Yet one Sunday morning, with the kids away at a sleepover, he sat across from me at the kitchen table, stirring his coffee in circles that seemed rehearsed. His eyes carried a weight I couldn't name. "Rachel," he said, his voice measured, "I need to ask you something. I need you to hear me out completely before you react." My stomach dropped. My mind ran through 100 worst-case scenarios. Was he sick? Was he leaving me? Was he hiding some secret I couldn't even imagine? I managed, though my voice betrayed the tremor inside me. He exhaled, the kind of breath you take when you're stepping into unfamiliar territory. "I know we're not where we used to be," he began. "I know you feel it too. The distance, the silence." I nodded slowly, unsure where he was going, but unable to deny the truth of his words. "I've been searching for answers," he continued. "Reading, listening, talking to people about how marriages evolve. How sometimes love doesn't always look the way we were taught it should." I frowned, trying to piece it together. "What are you getting at, Eric?" He hesitated, then leaned back in his chair as though bracing for impact. "I met someone. Not in the way you think. His name is Jordan Blake. He's a life coach, a mix of practical and spiritual. My therapist recommended him. I've been meeting with him for a few months. My heart lurched. You've been seeing someone behind my back? No, Rachel. Not like that. His hands reached across the table, palms up, pleading. He's been helping me see things differently. He believes that sometimes couples can find their way back to each other, not by clinging tighter, but by loosening the grip, by giving each other permission to grow, even if that growth looks unconventional. My pulse hammered in my ears. Unconventional how? He swallowed hard. He thinks you should meet him, that maybe he can help you help us. He believes you deserve to rediscover parts of yourself you've buried, even if that means opening up emotionally, even physically, with someone else. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. My husband, my steady, reliable, conservative husband, was sitting across from me suggesting I meet another man. Not to forbid me from temptation, not to warn me of danger, but to encourage me. I felt a cocktail of emotions: shock, anger, confusion. But to my own surprise, I didn't feel disgust. I didn't feel betrayed. Beneath the storm of thoughts, there was a flicker of something else, something dangerously close to curiosity. That day, I didn't give him an answer. I walked the neighborhood in circles, trying to reconcile the man I married with the man who had just invited me to consider another path. Was this a test? A trap? Or was it a strange kind of gift? Days turned into weeks. Eric didn't push. He let the idea breathe as though he knew it needed space. Until one afternoon, with my hands trembling, I dialed Jordan Blake's number. Rachel. He answered, his voice calm and steady, as though he had been expecting me all along. We agreed to meet at a cafe downtown. When I walked in, I scanned the tables until I saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed simply in jeans and a white shirt. But what struck me wasn't his appearance, it was his stillness. He carried himself like someone who had solved puzzles. The rest of us were still fumbling with Dot from the very beginning. He never once crossed a line. He didn't flirt. He didn't hint at intimacy. Instead, he asked questions no one had ever asked me. What do you crave that you've been denying yourself? When was the last time you felt adored, not just loved? His words cracked something open in me. For hours, I talked. About my childhood dreams, about the loneliness I hadn't dared to admit, about the longing to feel more than just useful. That first meeting was followed by another, and then another. Over the course of a month, we met 4 times. It's time, I told Eric. He never asked me not to go. He didn't show jealousy. Instead, he asked only, "Do you feel lighter after you see him?" One evening, Jordan invited me to his home. Not for anything dramatic, but for tea and meditation. I almost said no, but something inside me pushed me to go. His home was quiet, filled with books, the scent of sandalwood and soft music humming in the background. We sat on the floor, cross-legged, and he guided me through breathing exercises. My mind wandered, my heart raced. Then, gently, he asked, "May I hold your hand?" The gesture was simple, but the electricity that ran through me was undeniable. For years, I hadn't felt that alive. "I think I'm afraid," I admitted, my voice barely audible. "Afraid of what?" He asked softly. "Afraid of feeling again." His response was calm, almost a whisper. "Then, let yourself feel." I couldn't tell you when the space between us closed. Couldn't trace the exact moment, but suddenly, his lips were on mine. It wasn't reckless or hurried. It was careful, reverent, as though he knew he was handling something fragile. What unfolded between us that night was not about rebellion or lust. It was about awakening, about remembering what it felt like to be cherished, not just acknowledged. When I returned home, Eric was waiting on the couch, a book resting in his lap. He looked up at me, his eyes searching. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "Yes," I whispered, tears threatening to spill. "Did you?" His question was careful. Yes. He closed his book slowly, set it aside, and after a long pause asked, "Was it what you needed?" I nodded, unable to speak. My tears gave me away. He crossed the room, pulled me into his arms, and whispered, "Then I'm happy for you." The weeks that followed were surreal. I continued to see Jordan, but instead of creating distance between Eric and me, it brought us closer. We started talking again, not about schedules or chores, but about fears, dreams, desires. We walked together at night. We laughed again, the kind of laughter that comes from deep in your belly. Eventually, my meetings with Jordan slowed. Not because of conflict or endings, but because the purpose had been fulfilled. He had awakened something in me that allowed me to return to my marriage whole. Eric and I made a choice. We would not pursue an open marriage long term. Instead, we promised to be honest, to check in with each other, to never again let silence swallow us whole. Some people would never understand. Some would call it wrong, shameful, even destructive. But love isn't always about following the rules written for us. Sometimes it's about writing new ones. Sometimes it's about loosening the grip just long enough for both people to find themselves and then choosing each other again, freely, not out of obligation. Years later, I look back on that season of my life, not with regret, but with gratitude. Because in allowing myself to experience what I had lost, I returned to the woman I thought was gone forever. Love does not always wear the face we expect. Sometimes it comes in unconventional forms through unconventional choices. But in the end, the measure of love is whether it makes us grow. And for me, for Eric, and for our family, that growth came in the most unexpected way.